Hello there, and welcome back. Tonight, I want you to imagine something. Imagine waking up, not in your bedroom, not in your city, not even in the world you know today. Instead, imagine opening your eyes on Earth, more than 4.5 billion years ago. At first, you might not even recognize it. There are no trees, no oceans, no birds, no grass, no mountains covered in snow. No animals moving across the landscape. Nothing familiar exists, because the earth beneath your feet is still being born. The ground glows red, rivers of molten rock stretch toward the horizon, the air shimmers from unimaginable heat, and above you, the sky looks nothing like the one we know today. There is no peaceful blue atmosphere, no white clouds drifting overhead, only darkness, smoke, and a violent light of a young solar system. If you could stand here safely, well, you would probably believe you had arrived on another planet entirely. Yet this is Earth, our Earth, at the very beginning of its story. And strange enough, the world around you is still unfinished. Everywhere, giant pieces of rock continue crashing into the young planet. Some are the size of mountains, others are the size of cities. Each impact releases enough energy to reshape entire regions. The surface never remains calm for long. It is a world of fire, violence, and constant change. But perhaps the most incredible thing is this: despite how hostile everything seems, this chaotic place will eventually become home to forests, home to oceans, home to dinosaurs, home to humans, and home to every living thing you have ever known. Yet tonight, none of that exists. The future is still hidden. The story has only just begun. If you look upward, you might notice something strange. The moon appears much larger than it does today. Far larger, far brighter, and hanging dramatically above the horizon. Scientists believe that long ago, the moon orbited much closer to Earth. Night skies would have looked completely different. The giant lunar disk would dominate the heavens, its presence impossible to ignore. And every year, very slowly, the moon drifted farther away. It is still drifting away today, about the same speed your fingernails grow. A tiny movement, repeated over billions of years, until the familiar moon we see tonight emerged. But where did it come from? That question leads us into one of the most dramatic moments in Earth's history. Colondae, Morphea, Comb. Scientists believe a giant world once existed in our solar system, a world roughly the size of Mars, a world called Theia. And one day, long before life existed, Theia collided with Earth. The impact was beyond imagination. Entire oceans of molten rock erupted into space. Mountains vaporized instantly. The young planet was nearly destroyed. For a brief period, Earth may have been surrounded by a glowing ring of debris. A ring brighter than anything visible in today's sky. Over time, that debris began coming together, piece by piece, fragment by fragment, until it formed a single object, the moon. Every time you look at the moon, you may be looking at the remains of an ancient planetary collision, a reminder that even the calmest things in the universe can emerge from extraordinary violence. As millions of years pass, the young Earth slowly begins cooling. Not quickly, not peacefully, but gradually. The endless seas of molten rock begin hardening. Thin crust forms across parts of the planet. For the first time, solid ground appears. Yet the world remains dangerous. Volcanoes erupt constantly. Cracks split the surface. Lava pours across enormous distances. The air fills with gases released from deep within the planet. Carbon dioxide, methane, water vapor, sulfur compounds. The atmosphere becomes thick and toxic. If a modern human suddenly appeared here, breathing would be impossible. Survival would last only moments. This ancient world was not built for us. In fact, humans would not recognize it as home at all. And yet, something remarkable is beginning to happen. High above the planet, water vapor gathers, clouds form. At first, only a few, then more and more. Eventually, the sky darkens. Rain begins falling. Not for hours, not for days, but for thousands of years, perhaps even millions. Imagine standing on ancient Earth, watching endless rain fall upon a cooling planet. The water collects in low regions. Tiny pools become lakes. Lakes become seas. Seas become oceans. Slowly, the familiar blue world begins taking shape. The oceans that surround continents today may trace their origins back to these ancient rains. Some of the water molecules inside modern oceans may have existed since those distant times. Older than mountains, older than forests, older than life itself. Ancient travelers continuing their journey through Earth's history. Now imagine floating above the planet, watching billions of years pass beneath you. Continents appear, break apart, oceans open, then disappear. Entire landscapes emerge, only to vanish again. Earth never stops changing. Even today, the ground beneath our feet feels permanent, but from the perspective of deep time, nothing remains unchanged forever. Mountains rise, mountains fall, seas advance, seas retreat. The planet continuously reinvents itself, patiently, slowly, relentlessly. And somewhere within this ever-changing world, a miracle is approaching. Because despite the fire, despite the impacts, despite the hostile atmosphere, life is about to appear. The first living things will be tiny, so small they cannot be seen without magnification. No dinosaurs, no fish, no trees, no animals. Only microscopic organisms drifting through ancient waters, simple, fragile, almost invisible. Yet these tiny organisms will accomplish something extraordinary. They will begin changing the entire planet. And without them, none of us would exist. But that story is only just beginning. So for now, allow your thoughts to drift. Imagine the young Earth turning quietly through space, volcanoes glowing across the darkness, ancient rain falling upon a newborn world, the moon hanging enormous in the sky, and beneath it all, the first chapter of Earth's story unfolding. Slowly, patiently, across billions of years, the first loving things on Earth would not have looked impressive. If you could travel back in time and search the ancient oceans, you might be disappointed. There are no giant creatures swimming beneath the waves, no colorful coral reefs, no fish darting through clear water, no whales singing in the distance. Instead, the oceans appear almost empty, quiet, still, alien. Yet hidden within those waters, something extraordinary is happening. Tiny microscopic organisms are spreading across the planet, so small you would never notice them. And yet, these tiny creatures are about to transform Earth forever. Because they possess a remarkable ability, they can use sunlight. Slowly, patiently, they begin capturing energy from the sun, a process we now call photosynthesis. At first, nothing seems different. The oceans remain unchanged. The sky remains hostile. The world still feels ancient and strange. But over millions of years, a new gas begins accumulating: oxygen. Today, every breath you take depends on it. But back then, oxygen was almost non-existent. In fact, for many early organisms, oxygen was poisonous. Imagine that for a moment. The gas that keeps you alive would have been deadly to much of Earth's earliest life. Reality often turns out stranger than imagination. As more oxygen enters the atmosphere, the planet begins changing. Very slowly, almost invisibly. Millions of years pass, then tens of millions, then hundreds of millions. The sky transforms, the oceans transform, life transforms, and eventually, Earth experiences one of the greatest revolutions in its history. Scientists call it the Great Oxygenation Event. It may sound peaceful, but for countless organisms, it was a catastrophe. The rules of existence were changing, and there was no escaping it. Imagine waking up every day, only to discover your world becoming less familiar, less survivable. Scientists call it the Great Oxygenation Event. It may sound peaceful, but for countless organisms, it was a catastrophe. Entire ecosystems disappeared. Ancient forms of life struggled to survive. The atmosphere itself was changing. The rules of existence were changing, and there was no escaping it. Imagine waking up every day, only to discover your world becoming less familiar, less survivable. That is what happened to much of early life. Yet from this upheaval, something wonderful emerged. Complex life became possible. The future quietly moved one step closer. Now imagine standing beside an ancient shoreline, not millions of years ago, but more than 2 billion years ago. The landscape still looks strange. The continents are barren. No forests cover the land. No grass waves in the wind. No animals leave footprints in the sand. The world feels silent, almost empty. And yet, the oceans are becoming increasingly alive. Microscopic organisms flourish beneath the surface. Stars in cold. Invisible communities spread across vast distances. Life is experimenting, adapting, learning, preparing for a future no creature could yet imagine. Because eventually, life would leave the water. But that day remains unimaginably far away. As another billion years drift past, Earth continues changing. Continents collide, mountains rise, then erode away. Entire oceans open and close. The surface of the planet behaves almost like a slow-moving puzzle. Gigantic pieces of crust, known as tectonic plates, constantly move. Not quickly, not dramatically, but relentlessly. Even now, as you listen quietly, the continents continue moving. Africa, Asia, North America, South America, every continent remains in motion. The earth beneath your feet is not still. It never has been. Then something remarkable happens. The continents begin joining together, piece by piece, collision by briefly, timely, briefly, moving easily. Most of Earth's land becomes part of a giant supercontinent. A world unlike today's. South, a world where vast regions of land stretch uninterrupted for thousands of kilometers. Imagine standing in the center of this ancient supercontinent. The nearest ocean may be incredibly far away. The climate would feel different. The weather would feel different. Even the shape of the world would feel unfamiliar. Earth has worn many faces throughout its history, and this was one of them. One world has found an unfair sound, and well was the gift for me. But ancient Earth still has another surprise waiting. A surprise so dramatic, it almost sounds impossible. At several points in history, the entire planet may have frozen. Not just the poles, not just northern regions, nearly everything. Scientists call this period Snowball Earth. Imagine looking out across the planet and seeing ice everywhere. Ice stretching toward the horizon, ice covering oceans, ice reflecting sunlight back into space. A white world, a silent world, a frozen world. It sounds like the setting of a science fiction story, yet evidence suggests it may have happened more than once. Earth may have spent millions of years trapped beneath enormous sheets of ice, waiting, sleeping, until warmth finally returned. What would it have felt like to stand on that frozen planet? Would the silence feel peaceful or unsettling? Would you recognize it as Earth at all? Perhaps not. Because one of the most astonishing things about our planet is how many different worlds it has been. A world of fire, a world of endless rain, a world of toxic skies, a world of giant supercontinents, a world of global ice. Again and again, Earth reinvents itself, and somehow life survives every transformation. Life adapts, life persists. Life waits patiently for better days. As millions of years continue passing, the ice retreats, the oceans return, the climate warms. And deep within those ancient waters, something new begins appearing. Something more complex, more ambitious. Life is preparing for its next great leap. Soon, the oceans will fill with strange creatures, creatures unlike anything seen before. Creatures that will change Earth's story forever. But that chapter belongs to another age. For now, allow your thoughts to drift across the frozen landscapes of Sobol Earth. Imagine endless glaciers glowing beneath starlight. Ancient oceans sleeping beneath layers of ice. The continents moving slowly through deep time. And the quiet persistence of life, waiting patiently for the next chapter to begin. Wow. For billions of years, life remained small, simple, almost invisible. The oceans contained countless organisms, yet nothing that could truly be called an animal. No predators, no hunters, no giant creatures moving through the darkness. The planet was alive, but only barely recognizable as a living world. Then, something extraordinary happened. Life changed, not gradually, not quietly, but in a way so dramatic that scientists still consider it one of the most important events in Earth's history. Complex organisms began appearing, larger, stranger, more ambitious than anything that had existed before. It was as though life had spent billions of years practicing before suddenly deciding it was ready for something greater. Imagine diving into an ancient ocean more than 500 million years ago. The water feels familiar, touchy, but everything else feels alien. Creatures drift through the sea that seem impossible. Some resemble floating discs, others resemble living feathers. Some appear almost like plants, others look as though they belong on another planet entirely. This was a world of experimentation. Nature was trying new ideas, new body shapes, new survival strategies, new possibilities. The oceans became laboratories of evolution, and the results were often strange, very strange. Then came a period scientists call the Cambrian explosion. The name sounds dramatic, and for once, it truly deserves it. Over a relatively short period of geological time, life diversified at an astonishing rate. New species appeared. New body plans emerged. Eyes evolved. Predators appeared. Defenses developed. The oceans suddenly became far more competitive, far more dangerous, and far more interesting. Imagine waking up in a world where evolution seems to be accelerating, where entirely new forms of life appear around every corner. That was the Cambrian world, a burst of biological creativity unlike anything before it. For the first time, animals began hunting other animals. Until then, life had been relatively peaceful. Now, creatures chased one another, escaped one another, adapted to survive one another. An evolutionary arms race had begun. Every new defense encouraged a new attack. Every new attack encouraged a better defense. The oceans became increasingly complex and increasingly dangerous. Life was no longer simply surviving, it was competing. Among these ancient creatures, some looked truly bizarre. One animal possessed 5 eyes. Another had spines covering its body. Others swam using strange flaps that resembled alien wings. If you gathered them together today, most people would struggle to believe they once lived on Earth. Yet these organisms were real, ancient chapters of our planet's story, evidence that evolution often takes unexpected paths. As millions of years passed, life continued expanding. The oceans grew crowded, ecosystems became more complex. Food chains emerged, predators improved, prey adapted, and slowly, a new challenge appeared: the land. Until now, most life remained in the water. The continents were barren, silent, empty. No forests, no animals, no birds. Only rock, stretching toward distant horizons. Yet eventually, some organisms began exploring these empty spaces. At first, only simple forms of life ventured ashore, tiny pioneers entering a world that seemed impossible to inhabit. What? The land was harsh, dry, unforgiving, yet life persisted, just as it always had. Imagine standing on one of those ancient shorelines, looking inland. Nothing moves, no sounds echo through the landscape, no leaves rustle in the wind. The continents appear lifeless, and yet, the first colonists have already arrived. Small organisms cling to rocks, primitive plants spread across damp surfaces. Life has taken its first steps onto land. The transformation has begun. Slowly, patiently, irreversibly. Millions of years continue flowing past. The first plants spread, then spread further, then further still. Green begins appearing across the continents. For the first time in Earth's history, the land starts changing color. Ancient landscapes once dominated by bare rock become covered by living organisms. The transformation is profound. Life is no longer confined to the oceans. The atmosphere changes again. Oxygen levels rise. Climate shifts. New opportunities emerge. The world becomes increasingly suitable for larger and more complex life. A foundation is being built, one that will eventually support forests, animals, and entire ecosystems. But first, another surprise awaits. Because the next inhabitants of the land will not be dinosaurs, not mammals, not birds. Instead, the world will belong to creatures that many people overlook today. Creatures that seem small and insignificant, yet in ancient Earth, they would become giants. Imagine walking through a prehistoric landscape. Dense vegetation surrounds you. Strange plants tower overhead. The air feels warm, humid, heavy with moisture. Then something moves nearby. At first, you assume it is a bird. But there are no birds yet. You assume it is a small animal, but it isn't. Instead, a dragonfly glides overhead. Its wings stretch wider than a hawk's. Its shadow passes across the ground. And suddenly, ancient Earth feels far more intimidating. Because giant insects are coming, a world of enormous creatures is approaching, and the age of monsters has only just begun. For now, allow your thoughts to drift through those ancient oceans. Imagine the first predators swimming through strange waters, the first eyes opening beneath the sea, the first plants spreading across silent continents, and the first brave organisms stepping onto land. For a world in 900 feet, beginning a journey that would eventually reshape the entire planet. A journey still unfolding, even today. By now, the continents no longer look empty. Life has spread across the land. The barren landscapes of the past are disappearing. Slowly, the world is becoming green, but it is not the green world we know today. There are no flowers, no grasslands, no fruit trees, no colorful gardens. Instead, ancient forests cover the earth. Forests unlike anything alive today. Strange towering plants reach toward the sky. Massive club mosses stand as tall as trees. Giant ferns spread across the landscape. Dense vegetation stretches for incredible distances. The air feels warm, humid, heavy, almost tropical, everywhere. And if you were standing here, you might feel as though you had stepped into another world, because in many ways, you had. Something else is changing too, the atmosphere. Over millions of years, plants continue producing oxygen, and more plants appear, more forests grow, and oxygen levels begin rising higher than they are today, much higher. At certain points, the atmosphere may have contained over 30% oxygen. Today, the figure is about 21%. That difference might not sound dramatic, but its effects were extraordinary, because oxygen influences size, especially for insects, and ancient Earth was about to discover just how large insects could become. One day after the figure, imagine walking through one of these ancient forests. The air is quiet, warm, still. Sunlight filters through giant ferns overhead. Strange shadows move between the plants. Then suddenly, something flies above you. At first, you think it might be a bird, but birds do not exist yet. You look closer and realize it is a dragonfly with a wingspan approaching 70 centimeters, nearly the size of a hawk. Its wings shimmer in the sunlight. At first, Its shadow sweeps across the forest floor, and for a moment, the familiar becomes terrifying. Because insects here are enormous. The giant dragonfly, known as Meganeura, was one of the largest flying insects ever discovered. Ever. Imagine hearing the sound of its wings. Imagine watching it glide through the prehistoric air. Imagine seeing something that resembles a modern dragonfly, yet large enough to dominate the skies. Ancient Earth constantly reminds us of something surprising. The world we know today is only one version of Earth. Many others existed before it, and some were stranger than fiction. The forests themselves felt different too. There was no birdsong, no mammals moving through the undergrowth, no deer, no rabbits, no wolves. The sounds would have been unfamiliar. Wind moving through giant ferns, insects buzzing, primitive creatures crawling through vegetation. The entire atmosphere of the planet felt alien, even though it was home. And hidden beneath those forests, a remarkable process was taking place. As plants died, many became buried beneath mud and sediment, year after year, century after century, million after million years. The pressure increased, the heat increased, and eventually, those ancient forests transformed. They became coal. Much of the coal used by human civilizations originated in these prehistoric landscapes. In a very real sense, ancient forests still power parts of the modern world, a gift from a vanished Earth. Waiting underground for hundreds of millions of years. As time continued flowing forward, life became increasingly ambitious. Animals grew larger. Ecosystems became more complicated. New species appeared constantly. The world was becoming crowded, and competition was increasing. Yet another challenge remained, a challenge that would transform life forever: water. Most animals still depended heavily on it. Their eggs required it, their young required it. Their survival depended upon staying close to lakes, rivers, or swamps. But evolution was preparing a solution, one that would change everything. Imagine being one of the first creatures capable of moving farther from water, no longer trapped near shorelines, no longer dependent upon shallow pools. Suddenly, entire new regions become available: vast unexplored territories, empty forests, new food sources, new opportunities. Life begins spreading farther inland, expanding across the continents. The world grows larger. Not because Earth changes, but because life's ability to explore changes. Meanwhile, the continents themselves continue drifting, very slowly, too slowly for any creature to notice, but not too slowly for time. Over millions of years, landmasses collide, mountains rise, oceans shrink, new coastlines appear. Earth remains restless, always moving, always changing. The world beneath every creature's feet is quietly rearranging itself, preparing for future ages, future ecosystems, future giants. And speaking of giants, the next chapter of Earth's story will introduce some of the most famous creatures ever to exist. Creatures so enormous that their bones still inspire awe today. But before the dinosaurs arrive, the planet must first survive something terrible. One of the greatest disasters in Earth's history. A catastrophe so severe that it nearly ended complex life altogether. An event sometimes called the Great Dying. And when it arrives, the world will never be the same again. For now, allow your thoughts to drift through those ancient forests. Imagine giant dragonflies gliding overhead, towering ferns stretching toward the sky, endless swamps glowing beneath warm sunlight. And beneath your feet, the remains of ancient plants slowly becoming coal. A world both beautiful and strange. A world that feels familiar, yet completely alien at the same time. And somewhere in the distance, here is the staring fire. The next great chapter of Earth's story is already approaching, slowly, patiently, across the vast river of time. For hundreds of millions of years, life continued expanding. Forests spread across continents, oceans filled with strange creatures, new species appeared, old species vanished. The world felt alive, stable, successful. If you had been living during this time, you might have believed the future was secure, that life would continue growing forever, that the planet had finally found its balance. But Earth had other plans, because deep beneath the surface, something terrible was beginning. Something that would eventually become the greatest extinction event in the history of our planet, an event so catastrophic that scientists still struggle to fully understand it. An event known today as glorious. The Great Dying. Imagine standing on a prehistoric coastline. The waves roll gently towards shore. The forests remain green. The sky appears calm. Nothing feels unusual. Nothing feels wrong. And that is often how disasters begin, quietly. Without warning, far away from where anyone is looking, deep underground, gigantic volcanic systems begin awakening. Not ordinary volcanoes, not mountains occasionally releasing lava, something far larger, something almost impossible to imagine. Across what is now Siberia, the earth begins cracking open, and lava starts pouring onto the surface. Not for days, not for months, not even for years, but for hundreds of thousands of years. Imagine rivers of lava stretching toward the horizon. Then imagine those rivers continuing, century after century, generation after generation. The eruptions seem endless. The atmosphere begins changing, slowly at first, then more rapidly. Volcanic gases fill the sky. Carbon dioxide levels rise. Global temperatures increase. The climate becomes unstable. Oceans begin warming. Weather patterns shift. Entire ecosystems struggle to adapt. The world is becoming hotter and hotter and hotter. Imagine walking through a forest during this time. Now, the air feels different, heavy, oppressive. The seasons no longer behave as expected. Rivers shrink. Rainfall changes. Life begins feeling stressed, as though the planet itself has become sick. Because in many ways, it has. The oceans suffer most of all. Warm water holds less oxygen. As temperatures rise, oxygen levels begin falling. Entire regions of the ocean become difficult to survive in, then impossible. Vast underwater ecosystems collapse. Ancient species disappear. Food chains break apart. Life that had flourished for millions of years suddenly finds itself fighting for survival. The oceans, once full of opportunity, become increasingly hostile. And the crisis continues growing. Oh no! Scientists estimate that around 90% of marine species vanished. 90%. Imagine 10 species standing together, then imagine only one surviving. That is the scale of the disaster. Nothing before it compares. Nothing afterward would equal it. The Great Dying remains the most severe extinction event Earth has ever experienced. What would it have felt like to witness such a world? Would anyone have recognized what was happening? Probably not. No creature understood climate science. No creature understood extinction. No creature knew the atmosphere was changing. They simply experienced the consequences, the heat, the scarcity, the collapse of familiar ecosystems, the gradual disappearance of life around them. Even on land, survival became increasingly difficult. Forests declined, habitats disappeared, food became harder to find. Many species simply could not adapt quickly enough. Entire branches of life's family tree ended forever. Creatures that had survived for millions of years vanished, never to return, their stories ending in silence. If you could look down upon Earth from space during this period, the planet might appear unchanged. The oceans still shine blue, the continents still drift slowly beneath the clouds. The world still looks beautiful. Yet beneath that beauty, a catastrophe unfolds. A reminder that appearances can be deceiving. Even entire planets can seem calm while undergoing profound transformation. And then, after millions of years, the crisis finally begins easing. Volcanic activity declines, temperatures gradually stabilize, the atmosphere slowly recovers. The oceans begin healing. The world remains damaged, but life persists. It always has. Again and again throughout Earth's history, life survives. Perhaps not every species, perhaps not every ecosystem, but life itself endures, patient, resilient, determined. Imagine the survivors, the creatures that somehow made it through. They inherit a different world, a quieter world, an emptier world. Entire ecological niches now stand vacant. Opportunities exist everywhere, and evolution notices. Because whenever extinction creates empty spaces, life eventually fills them. New species emerge, new ecosystems develop, new possibilities appear. The story begins again, and this time, the next chapter will belong to giants. Wow. Not giant insects, not ancient fish, but creatures so famous that even children recognize their names. Creatures that would dominate Earth for more than 160 million years. Creatures that would grow larger than buildings, larger than whales, larger than almost anything that has ever walked on land. The age of the dinosaurs is approaching, but for now, allow your thoughts to drift across that ancient world. Imagine endless volcanic landscapes glowing beneath dark skies, ancient oceans struggling to survive, forests fading beneath a changing climate, and through it all, life refusing to give up, refusing to disappear. Waiting patiently for a new beginning, because after Earth's darkest chapter, a remarkable new age was about to begin.